The question that gets avoided a lot of the times with some of these truther channels, these conspiracy theory channels, these revolutionary podcasts and people that are projected into our reality, the thing that gets missed and gets avoided a lot of the times consciously is people talk about the system, but there are various layers of addressing this system. Like I said in previous videos, some people want to fix the system. Some people think the system is perfectly okay. So these politicians, these people coming from the modern Western American dream sort of perspective of Democrats and Republicans and even the progressives talking about some of the darkest, darkest shit that's going on in the system, still think that it's okay the way it stands, that nothing else needs to really change than to, how they say, clear the swamp out or whatever it is. They say they just think they don't see it as a swamp. You're talking about a swamp. It's an unlivable habitat. Oh, it's called drain the swamp. Yeah, drain the swamp. But why are you trying to build on swamp land? Nobody wants to build on swamp lands. So even if you drain the swamp, you're still living on swamp land. Why not address the land itself? See, that's the point that people don't want to make. They don't want to go there because once you start getting into the land, then you start getting into justice. And this is where a lot of these people don't want to go because of various reasons, but largely a lot of the times it's because they don't want to make vulnerable their creature comforts. They don't want to actually make changes that will, in so many different ways, threaten their livelihood, even if it's going to, address homelessness or poverty across the world. They're going to say, nope, I'm going to stay on this level of approach. Or, oh yeah, I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about that kind of stuff. It's all in the design to only go so far. So these systems, this is bankable. This is bankable by the system, which is why they create these podcasts, these YouTube channels out there to maintain the perspective on those points. Maintain the control of the opposition is only designed to go so far, to only hit so hard. So they can play the victim once they get hit by their controlled opposition. Oh, you hit us. We'll change now. We'll make this change in the system and we'll be better for you. We'll build back better. So they put these fake people out there so they can fake uppercut them and they can pull their punches in front of everybody on the mainstream media, make it look like they're actually having a fight, so that the people who are watching the show will say, oh, good, things are changing. Hence your so-called first black president who did nothing for so-called black people. In fact, in many ways did worse by allowing the system to grow. And then right after him, you had, it might be a bit of a stretch, but you can see where I'm coming from, where I say after Obama, the first so-called black president, you had the first so-called white president in Trump, because he was allowed to say and do whatever the hell he wanted to do and say, and activated this basically white privilege movement, this white power movement. They are now a political powerhouse that is in so many ways just has been adopted by the Republican Party. And now the Republican Party can place itself on a higher space by separating itself from the Trump faction of Republicans. This is why they called people like Dave Chappelle part of the Republican Party, like he's an infiltrator of some sort because of the things that he said. I forget the wording of it, but the point is to bring a light to the intricacies within the system being victimized themselves as if they are for the betterment of the people, when the entire system, not the little pieces inside the system, but the entire system exists at the expense of the people. So as long as you're focusing on the little pieces within the puzzle, the little pieces of the system, you're not going to address the entire system. So that's why the mainstream media is out there, to diversify your perspective. This is why they put TYT out there. This is why Alex Jones and the InfoWars is out there. This is why Joe Rogan and all the other podcast channels are out there. Howard Stern. This is why Russell Brand is out there, to tell you the truth of what's going on. This is why the late night talk show hosts were out there 10 years after 9/11 to make sure that your perspective doesn't go deep into the infrastructure of 9/11, of the establishment's involvement in that event, of false flags in general. No, they had to double down on the perspective of mainstream information. So you could see it as the mainstream media just being one level of topsoil, basically, that people were building upon for however many decades. Well, people started digging deeper through the mainstream media when they started to question stuff like 9/11 and all the other false flags of the world. And when people started digging deeper, the layer on top of the topsoil, which was the late night talk show hosts, the expansion of all that, was another layer that you can't build on, that you can't grow in. That artificial, that genetically modified topsoil was built on top of the mainstream media. So they put those late night talk show hosts out there. They put another layer of the online community, another layer of artificial topsoil on there, with all the podcasts, all your fake revolutionaries, all your communities on the online community. Another top layer of artificial soil out there are the social media community. So the Twitter community that can cancel people. There's a power behind this. You have the social media influencers, which is another layer that traps people living in different areas of this land where this soil exists. So once that last move of 9/11 went live, that's when all these other layers of distraction, topsoil, had to be dumped onto your consciousness, your perspective, in so many different ways. And this is a way of interaction that even individuals end up doing in order to protect their own investment, to protect their own perspective. Because in so many ways it's effective, because people want to be a part of a group. They want to be a part of a community. They want to be a part of something that at the very least has the illusion of movement. This is why these movements are out there. They call them movements, but movement to where? Towards what is my point? So at the best case scenario, people like Russell Brand, I'll use as an example, he talks about the corruption of the system. He goes into how corrupt this system is, and then closes out his videos with statements like, keep dreaming, or some, stupid shit like that. Something like, what does he say? Oh, stay free. That's what it is. Stay free. So this illusion of freedom, he has to emphasize this world of artificial freedom in a world of realistic enslavement. So that world, every time he closes out a video saying stay free, he's emphasizing the illusion of freedom in his bubble. And now he has a bigger following because Joe Rogan put him on a map in so many different ways. He has to emphasize how big that following is. So now recently he's been saying, all you 4 million wonderful beings, or whatever the hell he says, and are you 4 million free spirits, or whatever it is. It's the community that needs to be molded and shaped into this idea of freedom, this idea of separate from everybody else. But is it really separate when its end game is the same as the other systems? Saying things like stay free is no different than saying things like God bless America, or waiting on the next president to do something that the last president didn't do. It's a way to keep you in this realm of hope and in this illusion of forward progress. But it's really just kind of like a GIF. It's just a new GIF every single day, something that lasts only for a split second and then it just repeats itself. It's a living picture, a living photograph, a clip for a second to seem alive, seem like it's alive, like it's moving somewhere, but it's really just alive for that second. And as long as they focus your attention on that split second and tell you that you're alive, tell you that you're free as a GIF. See, in order to be free outside of that GIF sort of reality, you have to break the illusions of all the other GIFs that are out there that we consume to feel free, to feel alive. You have to address the system itself. But these people can't address the system itself because the system is their employer in so many different ways. They wouldn't have a job. If you were truly free, he wouldn't have to say that you were free, and he wouldn't have information to make you free to share online. He wouldn't have to do what he's doing. So these various systems have to maintain the perspective of being enslaved in order to sell you the illusion of freedom. So my question is, like I said, at best, people like Russell Brand talking about the system, the establishment, the foundations in so many ways, the criminal nature of this system, but not really activating it, not really saying, these are criminals, really just kind of, since he's a stand-up comedian, inherently the subject that he's speaking on, even at just a subconscious level, are received by people as jokes. It's a joke. For Joe Rogan to say Russell Brand is like the main news dude out there is another trap, because at his core, he's a comedian. So the information that you're getting from these comedians is already taken down a level because of where this information is coming from. It's coming from somebody who needs to lighten up this information. When this information isn't lighten up a bull, it's not supposed to be lightened up. It's supposed to be received at the essence of what's going on in order to make a real change. Laughing in the face of people, laughing at the system while it's murdering your people, stealing your land, poisoning your children on every level, the soul, the mind, and the body. Just accepting this with a happy smile on your face is basically the same attempt that the system tried to do with focusing all the attention on the words and perspectives, the nonviolent perspectives of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., when they had the amplified perspectives of El Haj Malik El Shabazz or Malcolm X out there, but they couldn't have that. They couldn't have people coming from that perspective because that's too revolutionary. That's too alive. That's too free. That's too free. But lightening this up, having this information sold to you the way it's sold to you is not freedom. It's not even in the realm of moving towards free. It's designed to keep you enslaved because it's designed to keep you trapped in a space. And the extra thing is, these people just get a little bit of piece of change here and there. They get a little profit, a little funky ass little dollar here and there. And that's what makes them seem real to people. Like, oh, well, he's just trying to make a living. He's just separating himself from, the old life. He's now just a family man. Owen Benjamin did the same thing. Like, he's just another version of a Russell Brand. They just have this approach towards what's going on, but it's not activated. It's not designed to go anywhere. And if it is designed to go anywhere, it's designed to go only so far and not include the perspectives of other people. And in fact, in many different ways, dismiss the perspectives of other people. And their ways have to exist at the expense of other people, which is what I'm going to get into in this video right now with my own personal examples of what happened when I started to talk about the Aboriginal people's perspectives of the world, the justice that is due to our people around the world in the so-called flat earth community, which is part of the so-called truther community. See, in that community, only certain truths are acceptable. Not all truth is acceptable. You can look in the comment section on many of my videos that came out in 2015, 2016, when the so-called flat earth movement started to take off. Look at all the people who are in there talking about, what are you talking about racism for? What are you talking about this? Flat earth has nothing to do with racism, da 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 da. And this is coming not only from random people in the comment sections, but entire YouTube channels were doing this. They were in fact pushing this perspective, this retaliation against my work. Even people that I thought were, on my same team or whatever. When I would go live on their channel, they would in fact attack me and then get their own crew together. And I'm not going to beat around the bush here. I'm talking about Bro Sanchez for people who follow his work. When I would go on to his channel, back in that time, he was adamantly against me bringing up the plight of the Aboriginal perspective. Even the information, the very positive and healing information that is connected to that. When I would bring up the ISIS paper, the work that was brought about by Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and Neely Fuller Jr., the justice-based perspectives, when I would bring that stuff up, I was dismissed. I was demonized. And that was, in many ways, just shocking to me because I did not expect that in a so-called truther community. And even more so, I didn't expect that, from a brother. Like, I didn't expect that to happen from that perspective, from a person of, my, in so many different ways, family dismissed this information. It was extremely shocking to me. So that's why I kind of took a back seat and, stepped back and started to do my own thing. And for people who don't know, back at that time, Bro Sanchez and I was working on making our own channel, like both of our work combined. So much so that even ODD worked on an intro to our videos and some images that we were going to use for the channel. That stuff was all made. I still have all that work that he did for our channel. But once I started to realize that he had a different approach in mind, and there was a lot of ego in his work that was stopping a lot of the progress that I was getting ready to go into, that's when I started to pull away. And this is not me saying anything that I haven't said to him personally, like directly. I've even told him about this video that I'm making right now before I'm making this video, and got no response from him because he knows this is true. Everything that I'm saying in here is the truth. So yeah, it was shocking to see that happen from somebody so close in so many different ways in this community, just in general, basically. And here we are 6 years later, it being those perspectives that I was bringing to the table, those perspectives being the centerpiece to what his channels are speaking on, to what his live streams are based upon now. But after, 5 and 6 years of my work being censored and the live streams that I was on being swept under the rug and removed from YouTube, now it's okay to talk of this information. It's just dirty. And you can see once people get into these YouTube bubbles, the information is no longer at the forefront of their approach. People are now focused on profit. And you can see with these YouTube channels, celebrities, they can't talk about certain things. They will get canceled. They will not get scripts thrown their way. Their following will diminish severely. So they censor themselves. So they censor other people. They will avoid information. They will avoid perspectives. Look at how powerful what Kyrie Irving is doing, what he's saying in so many different ways. And something as simple as just refusing the government mandate to stick something into his body. But the power behind that, look at the opportunity that all of these celebrities, all of the athletes across the board, not even just in basketball, but football, baseball, all the athletes have an opportunity to support this perspective and so many other perspectives, but in particular, this perspective, and not more than a handful even going there. If that, like the only inkling of support that I seen in reference to Kyrie Irving is Mayweather. There's a video out there that Mayweather put out there, just basically saying, keep doing, I know you as a person, keep doing what you're doing. You're strong, you're a leader, you're this, you're that. I support you. How hard is that? It's hard for a lot of people because they don't want to lose their support. They don't want to lose their money chain, their financial livelihood. See, Floyd is a boxer and has so many other different ventures where he gets money. He gets money from various sources, but he's basically the top of his own corporation. He is the corporation of Floyd Mayweather. He is that money maker. Whereas you have athletes across the board are working for slave masters. They are the slave. Football players are enslaved by the slave master of the NFL. Basketball players are enslaved by the slave master of the NBA. Baseball players are enslaved by the slave master of the MLB. And all of those public figures, celebrities, are enslaved by the slave master of the mainstream. So being able to be canceled. Look at what's happening to Dave Chappelle being whipped publicly by people part of these perspectives. In an outlet that's designed to push the limits. Comedy is supposed to push the limits. It's not funny if you're just talking about prepackaged, Lunchable style fucking jokes. That shit ain't funny. You have to push the limits. You have to, it's an intellectual. You have laughter, then you have like intellectual laughter. That shit that hits you deep on a personal level, that shit's fucking funny. When you have perspectives that hit you on like your political thoughts of reality and just observing the reality from a very funny and real type of perspective, that's the real fucking like core laughter that's out there. Because laughter, comedy is healing. They don't want you to heal. They don't want to be exposed. So they have to cut down even the people. You can see comedians as doctors in so many ways, as healthcare professionals, because comedy is healing. Comedy is laughter. So when they are attacking comedians, they're attacking your health, because your health, your intellectual health, your psychological health is a money-making outlet for the system. So by making people think, by making people laugh, you're healing people. And it's double and even triple the work, the progress that's happening individually, because one, people are laughing and healing, and two, people are getting smarter and they're becoming more aware of how this system and even people, individuals, are manipulating your thoughts, manipulating your perspectives. So he should be censored. He should be canceled. This is why they're attacking him. See him as a doctor. See, same thing with Kyrie. See these individuals, just his statement is healing. Remove him, censor him, cancel him. Make him not even be able to live comfortably. Affect his bank account. This is how hard they're going to go. This is how hard they are going. So just as that's happening on a large scale with celebrities and all that other stuff, you think that's not happening on smaller scales on platforms like YouTube? This is exactly what's happening. Only YouTube has more control over who gets censored and who gets promoted, because your work is being channeled through their platform. So basically, all of the content creators on YouTube are the slaves to the slave master of YouTube. All these influencers on TikTok and Instagram are the slaves to the slave master of social media, whatever platform they're on. So like I said in the beginning, you can attack all you want the information or the platforms within the overall platform of slave mastery, or you can attack the system of enslavement and slave masters. But people don't want to do that because it affects their platform. It affects what little bit of profit they get from being a part of the slave master system, because the slave masters are going to pay these Uncle Toms, these house slaves, in order to maintain control over the field slaves. Because the slave master couldn't do it on his own. He has to have people working for him. And even better, he has to have people who are a part of the field slave genome in order to have more an effect on the masses. Hence your so-called first black president. And all the other celebrities that are out there, the Will Smiths, the Stephen A's on SportsCenter, all your other NBA players who are attacking Kyrie Irving, saying that he's, whatever the hell they're saying that he's like a disgrace and all this other shit. The system needs those people because it makes the system seem beneficial overall, seem like it's not designed to do what it's actually doing, seem like people can actually make it within the system. So my question is to the people who aren't in these circles, who are just receiving this information, start thinking about this. If you're listening to these channels, if you're seeing where I'm coming from, start to think for yourself. If you're aware that these programs are out there addressing this corrupt system and the system itself is broken, my question to other people and myself is, replace the system with what? So if it's not enough to just speak on the corruption, speak about the corruption existing, what perspective do we speak about? And this is not like I'm coming up with this. This is me paying homage to another teacher that doesn't happen enough, who's been speaking on this information for so long, coming from the core. So one of the core reasons why I went on my vow of silence for the year was to put this teacher's perspectives on the map. And that is the perspective of justice, producing justice. So coming from the perspective of realizing that, yes, the system is corrupt. The establishment is broken and it's designed to be broken at our expense for a profit. Okay, now what? Well, what has happened as a result over all these generations, over all these years? What has happened to the people? We have been attacked. We have been hurt in so many different ways. Okay, what's next? Just build a utopia? No, you're going to build a utopia with broken ass people, which is what the system wants to do, because once you put those people in that utopian society, they will have something else to make a profit off of, which is why they're pushing the New Age agenda, which is why they're pushing this New World Order very hard, very quickly, so they can set up this idea of still being your mother and father, still being your slave master, still being your provider, still maintaining the codependency. So we have to start addressing the system of justice, the justice that is due to us as a result of all of the corruption that has been existing at our expense before we move anywhere. You can't build yourself, you can't construct a new society with people who have broken arms, broken legs, and a broken mind, broken hearts. You have to heal your soldiers first. You have to heal your family if you're going to do anything. Then you move forward. Otherwise, you're doomed to fail. And like I said before, the system wants you to move forward like that because you will fail. They want you to follow these fake ass leaders out there like Russell Brand, Joe Rogan, and all the late night talk show hosts because they know you're broken. They know if you get smart, it doesn't matter how smart you get. It doesn't matter about how much corruption. It doesn't matter how much of the corruption you are aware of. If your ass is still broken and you are still codependent on these fake ass leaders out there, you're not going to go anywhere. You are doomed to fail. And when you fail, they will bring in their next system. This is why there's a controlled opposition. People talking about and are aware of the reality of a controlled opposition, but they don't go into what that controlled opposition does, where it's designed to go, how it's designed to affect you. So once I became aware of that perspective, that's when I started to share the perspectives of Neely Fuller Jr. and one of his students, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, and the work that she's done. Once I started to share that with various communities, including the Flat Earth community, and then I seen that it was being shot down by channels like Bro Sanchez and Flat Earth and other hot potatoes, Mark Sargent, Jeranism, all those other people out there, they were adamantly against me even bringing up these subjects. Once I seen that, I said, okay, well, I guess I'm on my own. If these people are not even going to entertain this perspective being relevant, then they are just as much as part of the problem than the system itself. So let me just step back, work on my own stuff, and then not even pay them any attention. So that's basically what I did. And then once I, in my perspective, found that I've shared enough information, that's when I said, okay, well, let me make this go live for myself. Let me take an entire year off of speaking in general, not just online, but in general. Let me silence my physical voice for an entire year to heal myself in so many different ways. And I'll do that for a reason, for a purpose. And what I shared on the playlist, those perspectives, is why I did what I did. And one of the main ones was the perspective of producing justice. Once you produce justice, you're going to produce healing. Then you can move forward. We'll have a better outlook on what it is we need to do once we heal ourselves. And if you want to go into more of what that means, like, okay, well, produce justice, what does that mean? Well, if you're truly interested and you're feeling whatever kind of way about that, I would recommend looking into Neely Fuller Jr.'s work. He's broken it down in so many different ways. From the 9 areas or 10 areas of activity, the book that he wrote, the work that he's done, I would suggest, if you never even heard of his information, for starters, there's a channel called Hip Hop Cartoons that I've put on the suggested channels on my page. He does a lot of Neely Fuller Jr. cartoons to make it easier for people to see and hear, because he puts it in little chunks, little videos, to see the perspective, see where we are all coming from, who are coming from this perspective. And then you can go on his channel, producejustice.com, and get the book or see more of the information that comes directly from him. But there's a lot of information out there. For starters, if you haven't heard anything about this information, I would say first just read the book, The ISIS Papers by Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. Start there. And if you don't want to buy the book, I've even linked the playlist to that audiobook somebody put on YouTube a while back. I've made a playlist of that audiobook on my channel and linked it on my homepage. So I would suggest checking that out if you haven't checked that out. And like I said, when I brought that information up to people like Bro Sanchez and even people just on that channel, it was demonized. Oh, I don't got to read no goddamn book. Fuck that book. It ain't about that. Like just the ignorance and the arrogance behind just acting like you know everything and there's nothing else you need to look into is ridiculous. And even deeper, it's dangerous. Because like I said in the last 2 videos, these so-called leaders, these YouTube channels, these content creators are responsible for either two things: exponential growth or exponential ignorance. Now, obviously, there's in between, because there's some of these channels who are producing a lot of exponential ignorance, and there's a lot of information that people are getting that's positive. But overall, to dismiss information that is very, very crucial to a lot of forward progress, you are at the epicenter of creating that exponential ignorance. So for somebody who has 10 million subscribers to say on a live stream, fuck that work, that racist work of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and the ISIS papers, I don't need to look at that information. We're talking about humanity. It's all about flat earth and the human experience and all that other shit. For somebody to spew that ignorance out to 10 million plus subscribers, because you really look at it, more people watch videos that aren't subscribed to channels than they are subscribed. So if there's 10 million subscribers, there's 20 to 30 plus million people who are actually tuning in to this information, and over time, way more than that. The ignorance, the arrogance that promotes that ignorance is exponential from one person. For more of an example of people who are looking into the flat earth information, look at what Joe Rogan does with flat earth. How he dismisses it constantly, laughs at it, dismisses it in so many different ways, by ignoring it, by bringing all these other people to talk about counteractive information. And he does this with somebody in his friend circle that is an adamant flat earth believer. That's pretty powerful to be able to do that. But the point is to realize the exponential ignorance that happens from his following, because they're just going to follow whatever he says, whatever he believes. This happens on the smaller scale with smaller channels. So to sum it all up, at best, the truthers just want to motivate people to think about a new system, while New Agers are happy with fixing the system in place. But none of these groups are saying anything about justice. None of them. They never step into the realm of justice because there's too much responsibility there, and there's too much vulnerability in their creature comforts in that space. And if they can make money without making vulnerable themselves or their creature comforts, then why not? So why not just talk about the surface layer information? If you can make money off of it and still have the appearance of being a part of something bigger, something better, so they will avoid justice while overemphasizing this illusion of freedom. Like I said, even on another YouTube channel, this Pockets of the Future guy says the same thing in his closing statement, saying only spirituality will save this world. What does that mean? It's no different than stay free. So you'll see these people being promoted and publicized on large scales, like Joe Rogan and Russell Brand. The Joe Rogans and Russell Brands, they aren't even hinting at justice for what has been and what is currently being done. They won't even step into that realm of saying that justice needs to be served or even talked about. They won't even go into that. Whether they are consciously doing it or not is not my concern right now. My concern is that the fact that this information surrounding the idea of justice is adamantly avoided. Yes, there are people consciously doing it. And I can't help but think that people like Joe Rogan and Russell Brand, who are aware of all the shit that's going on, all the crimes that the Western world has pushed onto the 9/10 of the people of the world, the crimes of colonialism, the crimes of Western society, the crimes of the nation that they claim to be a part of. You're telling me they don't know about that shit? They interview people on a regular basis. People even bring this stuff up. They are in so many ways paid to avoid this information, because they bring people on their podcast to talk about certain things, which means they keep people off their podcast that talk about other things. And those other things are the perspectives that go into addressing the foundations of the system. So the same thing that Russell Brand and Joe Rogan doing, the same thing goes for all these gurus and so-called spiritual teachers. Like I said, is something wrong with the information that they're presenting? Am I saying that? No. For the most part, they're sharing very positive information. But there's more to that story. There's more to being free and being spiritual than just, sharing one side of the storyline. True spirituality addresses both the light and the dark. If you're just talking about one side, just the light, you're not really a spiritual person. You're not really a spiritual teacher. And like I've said in previous videos, if you're doing that, you're actually more harm than any good in the long run. If the focus is maintained on that space over a long period of time, because you're stopping growth, because you're not growing. Like I said, the leaders, the followers are going to follow the actions of these leaders. So if the leaders are forever in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, only focusing on the idea of the light and ignoring the dark, you're not a spiritual teacher anymore, because your followers are going to get up to that space and do the same thing. So you will have an entire following of people half-cocked spiritually. And that's where disease starts to set in. That's where more spiritual problems, depression, and all kinds of other shit starts to set in. And more than that, the system has more time to grow, because your most vibrant, most potentially threatening to this system of enslavement, those people are trapped. Instead of a trap of enslavement, they're trapped in a trap of the idea of freedom or enlightenment. And a good example of this is with all the information I shared on the Ojos and how it's used against us in the last video. A lot of that information on the Ojos is spoken about by people like Sadhguru, people like Muji. They know about this stuff. But do you think Sadhguru talks about the banks of the Ojos? Does he go into how that realm of energy is being manipulated by this system? No, because he's not interested in justice. He has a particular motive. And if he steps out of that, it will threaten his teaching. So the perspectives that I shared, all of the perspectives, attaching the Ojos to that justice realm, all of it is just ignored. It's never even acknowledged by people like Sadhguru and Muji and Eckhart Tolle and even your Dave Wilcox and even flat earthers, even people in the smaller channels of sharing information. They can't even acknowledge that information is valid or exists, because it's threatening to their own stream in so many different ways. A lot of these people just want to have the credit, like flat earthers, when I was talking about how flat earth connects to illusion itself, enslavement itself, enslavement of the mind, enslavement of the psyche back in 2015, when I was bringing that perspective to the table and saying, okay, well, people are enslaved by the heliocentric universe. Well, they're also enslaved by the system of racism and white supremacy. And they're like, oh no, oh my goodness, how dare you? You can't talk about that. Flat earth has nothing to do with racism. And like, no, I'm not talking about flat earth or racism. I'm talking about the enslavement of the mind. How are we enslaved in various ways in our minds? Well, this is one of them. How does that transfer over to the physical reality? These are a bunch of them. So when you see people who are attacking you, when you expand the conversation like that, then you are now aware that they are not about truth. They are not about even the subject that you're talking about. What they are focusing on, what they want is credit. They want credit for being able to say that they were the ones who brought flat earth to the attention of people. They want people to know about flat earth so they can say that they are the ones that told everybody. They want the credit. This is why they can't talk about other subjects. They can't go into the illusion. And they have to dismiss and demonize people who expand flat earth to other subjects, because you're taking away from their ability to get credit from sharing with the world this new perspective. This happened with me personally with Bro Sanchez. He's told the whole YouTube community he was the first and only person to talk about flat earth in relation to Cometian cosmology, when my work was already out there. The timestamps are there. But he said on more than one occasion on live streams to hundreds of people that he is the first and only person to talk about Cometian. He's the one who coined Cometian cosmology. He's the first one who shared the story of Nut and Geb to the flat earth community, which is just a total blatant fucking lie. But since he has a bigger following, he can do that. And like I said, there's more than one channel that was doing this back in the day. There was this channel called Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes with this lady named Patricia on there. And she would interview a whole bunch of people on her channel about different information surrounding Flat Earth, like the Other Hot Potatoes. And my channel was, pretty big in comparison relative to other Flat Earth channels at that time, until that YouTube started to realize the growth and it just fucking slammed it down. And it's basically been slammed down for the last 5 years now. This is why there are so little seen subscribers on this channel, and even subscribers are being removed. Views from videos are being removed. Subscribers are being removed constantly. But yeah, like channels like her channel, where she was interviewing these various content creators, supposedly talking about other hot potatoes, other hot items. When you bring your hot potatoes to the discussion and then actually bring the meat to the table with those potatoes, that's when those channels, those people shut down. So I was never even invited onto that platform. I would have never went on there anyway, because it just seemed like bullshit from the get-go. Because it was, like I said, comedians lighten this shit up. Well, her whole atmosphere was the same way. It was just doing more harm than any good. This is not a laughable situation. The same way that the system of racism, white supremacy created blackface and put that on cartoons and in TV shows and in movies to lighten up slavery, to make it look like slaves were all happy and shit. The same way blackface was created, this idea of whiteface is created with subjects of truth and justice online and with comedians. Comedian face is the main thing that's going on right now. They're talking about all these subjects that are very, very damaging and criminal with a smile on their face, coming from the voice of a comedian to lighten it up. Like showing images and pictures of slaves dancing and singing around a cotton field with fucking birds chirping and shit. Like the slaves were having a good old time. Like this was just a time in history where things were just a little bit different. No, it's a little more complex than a little fucking different. So to close it out, like I said, there's nothing wrong with having a focus on a subject. There's nothing wrong with focusing your entire works on a particular subject. We need perspectives like that. Some people work like that. Some people think like that. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, I'm speaking to the people who are supposedly talking about the universal systems, like the establishment overall, who are supposedly talking about all these subjects. And those are the people, when they have that focus that is supposedly about freedom, supposedly about addressing the establishment, when they focus on those perspectives, or even the people who only focus on one perspective, when they have that, at the expense of other people's focus and people who are presenting the perspective of justice, that's when it becomes problematic. That's when it becomes dangerous. That's when it becomes a weapon. And that's why I share the information and the perspective that I share on this channel overall. Because these happy-faced ass people talking about this information is weaponized. And very seldom will you hear people bring that perspective to the surface. In fact, people are defending it. So when people speak about this information and demonize or dismiss other channels, other work, other perspectives, that's no different than the system of racism, white supremacy having to run the modern world, but at the expense of Aboriginal justice, at the expense of indigenous truth, at the expense of native history. It's no different. They're selling you rainbows and gumdrops and all this other shit at the expense of the slave labor that goes into producing that bullshit. So they will censor your work or even blatantly steal your work and say they were the first ones to talk about this work. And if you bring that work to the surface with stuff like limited perspectives attached to it and ego attached to it, stuff that's going to get people spinning their wheels, you'll be promoted while other channels get censored. This is what happened to my channel. And if you don't want your channel to be seen for doing that and being a part of that, then you also have to censor other people who threaten that work. This is why my channel was so close to Bro Sanchez and now has been in so many ways censored. Not like he has the power to promote my channel. I don't give a shit about the numbers and all that other shit. I'm observing this work, the numbers of this work. But like I said, none of the videos, none of the work that is on this channel specifically is monetized. I don't give a shit about the YouTube numbers in reference to profit. That's not why I'm putting this work out there. When I venture out in public, speaking to people in different facets, that's when I'll start to work with the time relating over to something that can help me survive and get by in life. But as far as putting something out there without having any financial attachments to it, this is what I wanted to do with this channel, and this is what I have been doing. So just as much as all the other Flat Earth channels have censored my work because they thought it was racist or I was divisive, people like Bro Sanchez, and really he's the only one out there because he's just constantly going live as if he's saying something new. He's just as guilty as censorship as the other Flat Earth channels and all the other corporations that are censoring out there. Instead of dismissing my work because it hurt their feelings, he censored my channel for a profit. People start looking at my channel, then they're going to not look at his channel as much. Because like a drug dealer, you need returning customers. This is why you have to not share information that gets people off of this information stream, that gets people off of the codependency train. But once you start creating this idea of, flat earth teams, we're flat power, that whole thing, you have to defend it. Now people are going to defend it. And they will keep themselves from going into the perspectives of other information in defense of that community, of that group, of that team that they are on. So they will live in that world of ignorance at the expense of very profitable, intellectually profitable information. There's people are going to attack this channel right now who look at Bro Sanchez's work simply because they think I'm going against his work. Simply because their feelings are hurt. Like they think I'm going to go against Flat Earth or anything, as if there's something to go against. You're living in a fucking bullshit illusion. I don't like talking about individual people or, specific people or channels and stuff like that, because usually it doesn't matter. But when these individuals or these individual channels relate to larger pictures and larger storylines, I will use them as examples. And this is a very personal example to me because, like I said, we were supposed to work on a combined channel something like 6 years ago. And since then, we didn't have like a falling out or anything. We stopped sharing information mostly because I just pulled away from it because it was just too much ego in that circle, and the whole live stream approach that he was going to was just a stealing of a time sort of thing, just hours upon hours of live streaming with people just yelling at each other and for the most part not really getting anywhere. There's no goals. Like I said in the beginning, people who talk about the establishment, talk about the corruption of the system, it's a different stream of consciousness than people who are talking about replacing the system with what? Because ultimately you have people who talk about the system, then you have people who talk about replacing the system with something. The works of Neely Fuller Jr. are a good example of what to replace the system with: justice. In comparison to the people who steal your time and consume your time and ultimately create more codependency with just talking about the system being corrupt. And at best, the system needing to be replaced. Like I said, at worst, the people who are talking about the system needing to be replaced are setting people up for failure, because that's what the system wants to do. Because when they replace the system that people are asking for the replacement with, they're going to replace it with a system that has more control over the masses. This new world system. And this is what your new agers, your progressives, and largely a big chunk of your truther communities are moving toward, whether they know it or not. All their yelling and screaming and talking about the corruption is doing nothing more than setting the tone for the people, the sheep, who are the most deeply locked into the mind control, to just vote for a bigger system of control. So I was holding back for a while for making this video. Like I said, I don't like talking about specific channels, especially channels that for the most part I feel are sharing very positive information. But like I said, if it's going to be an example for a bigger problem, I'll do that. And even beyond that, at a time when information surrounding these subjects, the Aboriginal storyline, so-called Black censorship, at a time when this is at its all-time high, the worst of the worst is when other Black creators censor other Black creators for their own profit. That's the worst. At a time when our work is being so censored that it's being removed from these multi-billionaire platforms, when it's being hidden and swept under the rug by these billionaires, to be censored by people in your own circle is fucking sick. So in closing again, if you're a part of these circles, these perspectives, take a second look at the angles, the motives that these channels are going towards. Are the intentions geared towards something bigger, or are they geared towards the individual? Is it more about the people, or is it more about the ego? You'll see this in their intentions. You'll see it in their work. And if you see that existing, then just analyze it a little bit more. Think about it from a different perspective. Don't automatically jump towards having to defend it because you're a part of something bigger than yourself. I'm not attacking these groups. I honestly just don't even give a shit about communities and circles like that. Like I said, it's when these different groups and circles start to team up intellectually against other information. That's when I have a problem. When the works of other people start to get dismissed and demonized, that's when it becomes problematic. That's when it becomes weaponized. And if that's happening, you can see yourself being a part of that or not. So in relation to people like Russell Brand and Joe Rogan, Those perspectives are definitely weaponized, especially when you compare them to the works of people like Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and Neely Fuller Jr. They have presented the perspective of moving towards justice, healing, observing from a deeper layer rather than just making a profit off of the observation of the garbage that's out there. Activate your movement towards a particular purpose. Otherwise, you're just spinning wheels.